Hi, all, and welcome back to the Family Disappeared podcast. I am Lawrence Joss, and today is the second part of the interview with Dr. Lynn Steinberg, an advocate, an expert witness, a therapist, an author, and a professional with decades of experience fighting parental alienation, estrangement, and erasure. And today we're going to jump back into the conversation about the court system, about the judges, about how to represent yourself, of what to do and what not to do. And today is incredibly powerful because we really jump into this topic about being your own advocate, of being an agency of your own destiny and not taking this proverbial high road where we're trying to be the good person and the good guy. And we have like this idea or this something that's called a unilateral agreement where we're going to be nice and we think our ex-spouse is going to be nice and the court system is going to be nice and everything's going to be okay. And we're going to break down this myth and like really come down to the bare bones and say we got to show up in the court system. We have to be willing to dig into the dirt. We have to be willing to state some facts and represent ourselves in a way where we have an opportunity to change the course of the court. Because when we play this role of being the good person and taking the high road, we actually undermine everything that we're trying to achieve. We do not give our kids and grandkids the best opportunity to be reunited with us. So let's jump into it. I remember when I first separated from my ex-wife. My oldest daughter at that time was 12 years old, and she didn't talk to me, wouldn't get in a car with me, wouldn't have a meal with me. I had no idea about parental alienation or trauma or attachment disorders or estrangement or anything like that. I just thought this was a natural course of what a child goes through during a divorce and a breakup. And she had chosen to stay with her mother, and I thought that was normal. And it wasn't until a long time into my recovery and doing emotional and spiritual work that I realized she never wanted to stay there to take care of her mother. Her mother needed her to stay there to take care of her. So she was actually taking care of her mom. And I thought I was doing the right thing at that time by letting her stay there. And that was the proverbial high road. People saying, hey, do the right thing and the next right thing will happen. And that's just not true. Like, I need to be able to educate myself. I need to be able to advocate for myself. And when there's trauma involved, because I come from a family system that had some trauma, my ex came from a family system that had some trauma. And when trauma is involved, you can't necessarily see all the moving parts. So that's why it's so important to resource yourself, to find a group to support you, to figure out how to emotionally and spiritually get grounded. So once we enter into these conversations and we enter into these decision making processes, we're doing it from a place of resource and resilience. And that's not what I was doing. You know, in this episode today that we're going to get into with Lynn is really about being in court, being resourced, and also being your own advocate. Also taking control of the direction of your case or what you're going to do, whether you're representing yourself or you're having someone represent you. Like, it is our job to be our best advocate. And in order to do that, we need to resource ourselves emotionally and spiritually. And if you're looking for a support group, PAA, Parental Alienation Anonymous, is a free support group. There's a link down in the show notes. You can check that out and come on by. We have a tremendous amount of resources. You know, you don't have to do this alone. And I also want to remind everyone, please subscribe. Please share. Please let people know about the work that we're doing and that all these resources are free. And remember that this podcast is a community podcast. In the show notes is an email address. Let us know suggestions, questions, guests you want us to interview. We need your input to make this as useful as possible. And without the community's input, then the lenses that you're seeing represented in the show aren't going to be as inclusive. So please jump into the conversation and let us know what your thoughts are. Okay, let's jump into the second part of the interview with Dr. Lynn Steinberg. You mentioned something that's incredibly important, and I actually call it the zero step. And for anyone that's new to the community out there, the zero step is really building resiliency, building some resources, taking care of yourself emotionally and spiritually, and getting help. And some of that help is definitely going to be with a professional, with a therapist. And some of that help is going to be through like PAA, which is Parental Alienation Anonymous, which is a support group. We are seeing so many parents get relationships back as they're navigating the court system because they're doing exactly what Dr. Steinberg is saying. They're not coming in emotionally charged. They're coming in grounded, they're coming in supported, they're staying with the facts, and they have a community of people behind them that are supporting them. You know, so for anyone out there that's in the early stages, Like there's a zero step before the court, before the attorney, before all these things. We have to make sure that we as parents are ready to navigate a really acrimonious, emotional, crazy making system. So I think that's an incredibly important point. And I'll also say so many parents I've spoken to, when they talk about their regrets, they talk about going in there and being emotionally disturbed and mouthing off to the judge or snapping back at their ex-partner or whatever. And from that place, they've created this huge hole that they're already behind. Like Dr. Lynn was saying, they're not on the offensive, they're on the defensive for the rest of the trial because they've set the tone that they're emotionally not stable. And that's what the judge's first impression has been.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. And also, I do refer almost every parent to your group because I think you're right. You know, every alienated parent needs a support system out there. And ideally, you'd want parents to form, you know, like little subgroups. So when they go to court, somebody can go to court with them, or after court, they can call or report back to the group, because I know you have groups almost every day. So people who have gone and have gotten back to me about that say it's very helpful, that they got a lot out of your group.
Yeah, and we have so many parents that are reunited with their kids. And the main thing that they always say is, thank God that I have a support system, professional and a group level, where it's peer to peer, because I've learned different ways to resource myself. And like Dr. Lynn said, is I call people before I go to court. I call people during a break. I call people after. And there's people that aren't in the middle of it that can kind of ground me. And we get back to just coming in, presenting the facts, staying really, really in my own body, and not creating a disturbance in the court that's going to land up resulting in me not getting my kids back because of something that I did. And I'll say for me as a parent, I created a lot of havoc early on because I didn't have a support system in place. I didn't know what was going on. I wasn't educated, and I was just emotional, and I just wanted my kids back. I just wanted them to love me. I just wanted to be a normal parent, and I didn't want to navigate this. It just all seemed like a nightmare.
Exactly. And of course, alienated parents are the good guys, and they want to show that they're the good guys. And so they often shy away from doing what's best for them. They don't want to go and, you know, like down and dirty or something. They want to maintain the high road. And you only have to establish once that you're willing to go down and dirty with the alienating parent, and it usually doesn't happen again, you know, because they suddenly want to make a settlement, or, you know, things get sort of cut off at that level. So it's important. And I think the other thing in my book, I talk about forms, which are very important, and how you go and file those forms, which forms you need, how you fill them out, and how to file them with the court system. And the other thing I talk about is, if you do get a lawyer, that there are certain questions you should ask that lawyer to make sure that they know about parental alienation. Or if they don't and you want to keep that lawyer, you be in charge. You be the consumer. You don't allow the lawyer to dictate what's going to happen. You tell them what you want them to do. Because if somebody's going to screw up your case, it's someone who doesn't believe in how to deal with parental alienation and does what they like, as opposed to what you're telling them what to do.
So I've heard a lot of parents struggle with their attorneys, but like you're saying something here that I'd like you to expand on a little bit, like you be in charge, you tell the lawyer what to do. Can you give me like a couple minutes on what that would look like, or what some of the suggestions would be in how to be in charge?
Well, first of all, in my book, I list a bunch of the questions that you should be asking your lawyer, which are similar to what you ask a therapist, in terms of like, what training did you get? What do you know about parental alienation? Have you had cases where you've successfully, you know, won a case where there has been parental alienation? How do you get the court to determine what parental alienation is? What kind of help do you get if you need it? Because some lawyers, you know, they really are egotistical and they don't want to get help. But there are expert lawyers out there in the United States and Canada that can actually get on the phone with your lawyer and for 1 hour just give them advice on what to do in the courtroom. So you want to know that your lawyer is open to that kind of expert advice from another lawyer. And you definitely want to be in charge of your case. So if your lawyer is filing a lot of ex partes don't need to be filed, and you can tell ahead of time that it's not going to work to go in on that issue. And so the lawyer is actually making a lot of money, and you just let him or her file a case that isn't going to go anywhere with the judge, because the way the judge evaluates that is the child in any danger? No, usually not. And so they will not allow an ex parte. They will say, okay, you have to file for an RFO, which is a call to order, and then we'll hear whatever it is that you're dealing with. So be in charge, know what you need to be doing, and make sure your lawyer follows your instructions and doesn't just keep filing ex partes, which I've seen many times. And also, you know, file a restraining order on your ex if you need to. You know, if they're creating a disturbance or doing something, because restraining orders are good to have around in the court. You know, it shows that you're willing to go that far. And sometimes you need to have a restraining order. So don't shy away from it. The restraining orders are often given in a different court than the family court, although they get sent to the family court to be dealt with there. But usually you can, get a restraining order if something's going on. That's better than filing an ex parte, because an ex parte in family court means that you think your children are in danger.
Got it. So really being in charge, make sure that you're educated, managing the case. I love the idea about having your attorney get an education from an attorney that is more of an expert in this field. And just to remind everyone, Lynn's new book is You're Not Crazy, and it has a bunch of incredibly useful information, great questions to ask, and it covers a multitude of different topics that are going to be incredibly useful to you representing yourself and just navigating parental alienation. But I want to go back and recapture one thing we just spoke about. We spoke about the alienated parent tendency to capitulate to the alienating parent and be like the nice person. And I know for me, I took the high road and I did the right thing over and over again. And it wasn't the right thing because it created more harm by just being the good person, by not making a stand, by not calling out certain kinds of behavior. And so many people, again, that I've spoken to, they're very scared to push into their own attorney, to the judge, to the therapist, and they're all just working on eggshells because they think everything is just going to completely cave in on them.
Yeah. And lawyers like that stance as well, because it means less work for them. So you want to ask a lawyer, if you're going to hire a lawyer, if they're willing to go out on a limb and say things, because a lot of lawyers say stipulation, stipulation, but then you make an agreement, which is what a stipulation is. And like I just had a client, he agreed to do weekly family therapy, reunification therapy, and that his ex would bring their daughter to the sessions. Well, he just wrote me a long email describing what chaos there was in the first session, with the ex screaming at him, how he was ruining his daughter's life because he was bringing her to therapy, and now she'd have to take the daughter to the emergency room because the daughter was having an anxiety attack, which, is a result of having all this stress and tension, and wanting to be with one parent, but has this crazy parent there. And he agreed to that, even though he knew that that approach was not going to work. And I think you're right that parents who take the high road, I mean, it's a very nice concept, right? And if I was the person, I'd also want the other parent to take the high road. But they're not going to take the high road. They're going to take the low road, if you can say that. They want to get vengeance on you. and the accusations escalate, and the normal therapy doesn't work. And so you're going to lose unless you take these other more, should we call it aggressive steps? And it's got to be against the parents, not the children, the other parents, not the children, if you want to see your children.
Right. And this seems like there's kind of like a loyalty bond, like at least it was for me between me and my ex, where again, we were married one time. I loved her and I wanted to continue to be like a good person. And it felt really hard to bring up some of the things that were going on because it would have a really negative effect on her. I see a lot of parents in this position wanting to still take care of their ex partner. It's a really interesting dynamic in parental alienation where they're still trying to take care of someone that they're not in a relationship with anymore. Do you see that often?
I totally agree with you. I mean, it happens all the time because I always, at one point or another, I say to the parent, the other parent is not feeling the way you do. They're not trying to preserve anything with you. They want to get vengeance for you leaving them. Even they may have left, but their feeling is you abandoned them. And that's what they want to get the court to see, even if it's, usually it isn't true, because the alienated parent would stays there because they don't want to lose their children, or they try to hang in there even though things are really bad. So I would say don't worry about that person's feelings because that feeling is not coming your way.
Right. So just take care of yourself, show up, present the facts, make sure that you're really resourced. And yeah, the court's going to play out whatever way it plays out. And generally, the court just seems like a really cold, harsh place to go in, no matter who you are. And it doesn't seem like the results necessarily serve the kids very often. Right.
You're balancing it against the longer the alienator is alienating your children, the worse your children are going to feel toward you. So, as the alienated parent. And so you're balancing that against going into court and having that horrible experience of how cold and matter of fact it is. And the good part of that is that because it gets dragged out for so long, you get used to it and you get smart, about what motions to file and what you should be doing in the court. And if you, like in your group, and everybody's talking about, what helped and what didn't help and giving advice or support, then it gives you an opportunity to do that. But I always tell people is go at them hard right in the beginning. And then the alienator and their lawyer knows that you're not going to lie down and be the good guy because they expect that from you.
Yeah, and that sounds like a really important thing that you keep reiterating is that you need to go in prepared. You need to be ready to actually talk about the facts, and even if they're uncomfortable and don't put the other parent in the greatest light, like you have to talk about that stuff. Otherwise, you're going to dig yourself a hole that you're not going to be able to dig yourself out of.
Yeah. Because you can be assured that the alienating parent will get the children to start making accusations which escalate to the point of sexual abuse accusations, which they always do. It's amazing. You think every case is unique, but it's not unique in that respect. The false allegations against the alienated parent when they get desperate escalate and become more wild, and so the only way they can be dispelled is for like an expert to go through all the records and say there's no record of this abuse. There's no evidence of it. This child has been talked to, this alienated parent has shown that there's no abuse. There isn't any abuse. And the judges usually do listen to that. They may not listen to other stuff that's really important, but they do listen to that.
Yeah, and it's interesting how you say a lot of cases, or I think you might have said most cases, escalate to the point of some kind of physical or sexual abuse when the parent gets desperate enough. I haven't heard that before.
Oh, really? Yeah. These are false allegations that they make. I think I've talked about that extensively in my book, how harmful that is. Yeah.
like the only real intervention in the court system is reunification when it gets to the point that the everything's kind of like bogged down. Are there other any other interventions that can happen through the court system or outside of the court system that you find to be very useful?
Well, what I've seen is that when the alienated parent is offensive in court, and they can start seeing their children. The biggest antidote to parental alienation, the children being alienated, is for them to see the alienated parent, because then they cannot put together the fact that they have a good relationship with this alienated parent and the other parent's badmouthing them. And so, if at the same time you can get some therapy, the therapist can say, well, tell your parent you don't like it when they badmouth your other parent. Set some boundaries. You can help them with that. You can help the children with that. But if they're not seeing the parent at all, then alienation can just fester and grow. And then pretty soon the child feels that what the alienating parents' views are is also their view. And so that's when you need a more intensive intervention, which is the 4-day intervention and 90-day no contact, so that the alienating parents can get some treatment and start to see what they are doing to alienate their children against other parents and how harmful that is to their child. Now, the problem that we have is that there are hardly any therapists who are trained in this manner who can work with and would be willing to work with an alienated, because they're so litigious and horrendous to deal with, that most therapists shy away from it. And there isn't a very high success rate with that.
That's a fascinating point that I haven't heard brought up before. That actually an alienator that needs to work with a therapist, they don't necessarily have anyone to work with because they're so incredibly difficult. And even if the court orders it, they might not be able to find a professional that's available.
Right. Or otherwise they find a professional who's going to just go along with whatever they say.
The system is just wow, it's wicked, crazy, and hurtful, and broken in so many different ways. And just like in a longer term view, Lynn, do you see like something coming down the road that's a new form of intervention or something outside of the court system that's being worked on to help parents and families navigate this kind of stuff? Is there anything on the horizon that's hopeful?
Well, most therapists who do the reunification therapy, they want a court order to protect them, because the alienator is just as litigious towards any treating therapist as they are toward the alienated parent. So if there were a situation that both parents signed off and said, okay, this reunification is going to take place, and I'm going to support it, so I'm going to pay half of it, and the children can stay with you for a while. I mean, that would work if the alienator was willing to do that. But it's sort of like what the FBI does. The FBI takes abducted children, but they have to do a therapeutic reunification with the family that they've been abducted from, because there's so much trauma. And they do the same kind of therapy that we do. So I don't know, maybe because one of the things we're trying to get past here in California is that there be training on parental alienation for judges, lawyers, therapists, teachers, mediators, anybody who's involved with the whole system. And I think that might take care of a lot of it if people could recognize the dynamics and fight for it right in the beginning, instead of having to prove something even exists in order to get some kind of treatment. So if we could take care of it that way, which we're hoping would take care of it, I think that you might see things changing, people being more innovative with therapy and their approaches. I'm talking about therapists. I think that, or even teachers potentially, where they would have to report if they recognized that there was alienation going on. And that would nip it in the bud. The police would get involved. But I can tell you that in Mexico, that's one of the countries that has laws against parental alienation. If the parent doesn't pass the children over at a transition of custody, that parent, the alienated parent, can call the police. The police come, they look at court orders, they say, this is the child's custody time, you're not cooperating, and they take that alienating parent and put them in jail. So they actually don't even have to go through a court process. And there's, laws against parent alienation in Denmark, Brazil, Puerto Rico, Gibraltar, Malta. I can't think of other places, but unfortunately not in the USA yet. But in Canada, it's close to being against the law. And the UK is getting closer. Ireland is getting closer. So I'm hoping that, there's a saying in psychology, state ways make folk ways. And what that means is if you create a law, then people in general will accept it and begin to believe that it was their idea in the first place. And I give some examples of that in my book, which people can read if they want to. But yeah, I think the law has to change before any of this can be better.
Well, that's great. There's some hope in educating the educators and the teachers and the lawyers and the judges, and also hearing that other countries actually have laws in place to protect the parents, and that they're pretty stringent and they're close. And in big democratic countries like Ireland and Canada and the UK, for me, I find that to be really exciting. And man, that's a lot of information to cover in a short period of time. And if you want to read more about it, get Lynn's book, You're Not Crazy. It's phenomenal. It's a great read. It has a great bunch of information in there. And just to sum up this call and representing yourself in court and stuff like that, like what would you say are the three most important takeaways that you would share in this little tiny soundbite for people? Like these are the three things that you definitely need to do if you're going to represent yourself or if you're just going to navigate the court system.
Well, I would say document, document, document. Get all your documents together. Keep track of everything that happens so that you can put it in the court documents that you would write. Also, by the way, on my website, I list 3 different organizations that do free legal work so that you can get somebody to help you draft, like, one of the documents for the court, the declaration. And secondly, I would say get the support you need, do what you need to take care of yourself because you're going to be in this for the long run. Get support in the way of a group like yours, which is still no cost, right?
Feel free, yeah.
Yeah, which is so great for parents who are in bad situations. And then the third thing I think would be to just be in charge of your case. Don't let somebody else take charge of it or persuade you. I mean, what you want is your children back, right? So keep that right in front of you at all times so you don't get sidetracked by anyone who's telling you to come to an agreement that's not going to work.
Oh, I love it, Lynn. And again, for everyone out there, there's going to be a link in the show notes to Lynn's book. There's going to be a link in the show notes to her website, which has a plethora of information, as she's just said, some free resources for some legal help and support. And there'll be a link down there to the group support system, which is Parental Alienation Anonymous, which again is completely free, and just parents that are in the same kind of situation. So you get a lot of love and yeah, some support that's very, very difficult to find in general. And Lynn, I'd like to say thank you so much for taking the time and coming out and having a conversation. And your hard work is so greatly appreciated and needed in our community. Thank you so much for that.
And yours too. And I would like to say just one other quick thing. There's a lawyer on the East Coast by the name of Lawrence DeMarco. Are you familiar with him?
You've mentioned him to me a couple times, but I am not. So, I'd love to hear a couple seconds about him. That'd be wonderful.
Yeah, he just developed a whole course, which you do have to pay for, but you can get it online. And it tells you step by step legally what you have to do to fight in court. And at the same time, you can call him for any advice or prompting or something like that. But the people who have taken this class, I haven't, but they say it's amazing and great. So you can look at it, look him up on Lawrence DeMarco, and I think it's called the Law Center. But he's on YouTube and you can contact him very easily. He's very approachable. And that can be very helpful for people going to court.
I love that he put together some kind of framework for people to be able to follow step by step, and that you can also hire him to get some support and stuff on that. And we'll find a link for that and throw that in the show notes for you too, because that sounds incredibly important and a great opportunity. So again, Lynn, thank you so much for your time, and I hope to see you soon somewhere. Holy Batman, that was good. I didn't expect to get so many insightful moments in the interview with Dr. Lynn Steinberg, not to say anything negative about anyone, but like I'm amazed how much wonderful information she represented and shared with us today, and how open she was with different resources and stuff like that. I am so grateful to you, Dr. Lynn, who is a friend of the show, a supporter of the show, a supporter of the PAA community. You know, it's professionals out there that are doing this kind of work that can help support us as families, and it's professionals like Dr. Lynn Steinberg doing some incredibly important work to support all our different communities. And as a reminder, there's some great resources in the show notes. There's the PAA community, 12-step support group, 14 meetings a week, everything free. There's the Family Hope Project, a worldwide advocacy platform that's online. We're partnering with different organizations around the world. If you're part of a different organization, if you want to be part of this, it's a collaborative. Send us an email. The email address is down in the show notes. And again, community, please participate. Let us know questions. Let us know suggestions. And now about the next show is going to be fun. It's just going to be me, but we're going to jump into a little bit of a different format. We're going to talk about some cool different ideas. We're going to talk about a loyalty contract. We're going to talk about silos and how some of our kids are in different silos. We're going to talk about the drama triangle, and we're going to talk about some other different kind of nuanced ideas about what's happening within the parental alienation system. And then we're going to take a little bit of a break from that and jump into some questions from the community. And then we'll let you know what's happening in the next show, what else to expect. And we're also going to be launching a bunch of new resources for you too. So we'll see you at the next show, and thanks for coming by to play.